I want to take you to the Gospel of John, chapter 4. And I hope you have a Bible in front of you, because we're going to walk our way through 42 verses before we're through. But but in the passage we're working with, Jesus talks with a woman at the well in Samaria. It's a familiar story. Many of you have read it before or heard it taught. But it's one of those stories that only John records for us. In his old age, he writes the last of the Gospels, the four Gospels. This one, the Gospel of John, and doing so, he records several things that only he records as he remembers them in his time of working as a disciple of Jesus in Jesus' earthly ministry. And John chapter 4, verse 1. When Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, meaning John the Baptizer, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea, that means the area around Jerusalem, and departed again for Galilee, the area north of Jerusalem, around the Sea of Galilee itself, and had to pass through Samaria. If you could just, on a map, picture the fact that Judea, Jerusalem is south, he's traveling north. In order to get up to Galilee, he must pass through a middle region called Samaria. It's called Samaria because it was the region of the northern 10 tribes of Israel when they split into two pieces. Jerusalem with 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, 10 tribes to the north called Israel, and their capital that they formed was named Samaria. It had become quite a godless place, if you can believe that. The truth of the matter is, the southern 2 tribes built around the temple in Jerusalem worshiped the Lord and observed his feasts that he had asked them to observe each year. The northern 10 tribes, however, were in rebellion against the reign of David's children, like Solomon and his son. And so they did not worship the Lord. In fact, they worked pretty hard not to do so. They formed golden calves as their gods in 2 places in the nation. So because the king who had formed the nation was afraid that they would worship the Lord if they went back to Jerusalem for the feast. Couldn't have that. So to preserve his own self, selfishly, he decided that what they needed to do was to worship other gods. This led to a very long, sordid history in which the Lord told them over and over again through his prophets, I'm going to judge you severely if you do this. Well, they ignored it. And so in 721 BC, the Assyrian Empire walked in because they had rebelled against Assyria's domination and literally destroyed the nation. Took those 10 tribes, well, at least for the most part, away someplace else because the Assyrians, who were the bullies of the Middle East, everybody hated the Assyrians except the Assyrians. And their premise was, take the population that's existing, that's rebelled against you, move them completely out, destroy them completely and their families and their forebears and their vineyards, etc., and implant in place of them other peoples so there wouldn't be so much rebellion. I'm not sure how well that worked out, but nonetheless, that was their theory. And so what they put in place of the Jews of northern Israel were other peoples who came along forcibly to live in the area, and they sort of took up the name Samaritans because they were formed around the ancient capital of Samaria, and they were not Jews. They were from other places. but they sort of, over a period of time, took up some of the Jewish law and the Jewish God and formed a temple on top of Mount Gerizim. By the way, the Samaritans are still in that area in small numbers, and they still worship on Mount Gerizim the Lord God. In any case, I'm giving you some background here. Maybe too much history, but just stay awake with me for a few minutes. And so he left Judea, departed again for Galilee, had to pass through Samaria. The problem, of course, with Samaria is the Jews hated them. They saw them as not even half Jews. They were just sort of Gentiles who were faking it. And that's how they saw them. The Samaritans also hated the Jews. And so Jesus passes through this area on his way north. He came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. That's from the book of Genesis. And Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour, which means it was high noon, the hottest part of the day. And he'd been walking all morning long, so he was settling down at the well. But keep in mind, there is an appointment for him to be at that place at that time. In verse 7, a woman from Samaria came to draw water. And Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food.